Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to a special edition of Hydrocarbon Processing's podcast series, The Main Column, and we're here live at the AFPM Annual Conference. I'm Mike Rhodes. I'll be your host today. I'm the managing editor of Hydrocarbon Processing magazine. We have two very special guests joining us today from Detect Technologies. The first is Daniel David, CEO and co-founder. Welcome. And the second is Teddy Huerta, Director of Business Development. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedules. How are you?
Doing well.
Yeah.
And ask for better weather, better company being here. Thank you for hosting us, Mike.
That's great. Thanks. First, again, thanks for giving us some time. For those that are not familiar with Detect Technologies, maybe tell me a little bit about your organization and what you're seeking to accomplish here at the AFPM annual meeting.
Sure. So firstly, thank you for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually quite excited after the first two speeches that happened today.
They were great.
They were fantastic. Both Chet and Will Hurd was amazing. But a quick introduction of ourselves, right?
Please.
What we do at Detect. So Detect, we are an industrial AI company that builds AI technology, or artificial intelligence technology, with a single vision to make the industrial world a safer place through actionable AI, right? Because there's a lot of AI that exists in the planet, but the key word here being actionable, right? To be able to bring in AI and bring value at the site level to improve the safety of people, both through camera-based data, through sensor-based data, and bring value from the front line all the way till the corporate management. We operate in levers such as safety, security systems, operational systems, and inspection systems. So that's what we do, and we'll be covering a bit over the course of today, but that's at a high level what we do at Detect.
Is your technology necessarily a new technology? How has adoption been?
Sure. No, thank you for that. I think I'll deep dive into the technology a little more than in that case, right? I think back in 2013, 2014, when vision-based intelligence, and to describe vision-based intelligence, I think your photo apps were starting to develop technology that could tell you from your photos, there's a dog in your photo, there are mountains in your photo, and so on. Today, it's very mature in your photo apps that you have right now. This was being developed, I would say, early 2010s or even before that, right? They were rule-based systems. What we realized in Detect was, early on, this was not being built for the industrial ecosystem, right? Industrial data was confidential, and it is very different from the data you take on your phones. Someone walking under a suspended load, those images would not be seen open source to people. So someone needed to train a similar AI system what those unsafe areas look like and what those unsafe possible incidents are. And that's exactly what we did. So I wouldn't say machine vision or computer vision based technology or AI technology is new. It's existed for the last 10 to 15 years. But the difference is, and why it's suddenly useful to the industrial segment, is we've made sure that information translates and you're able to bring actionable insights to both if there's someone doing something that is life critical, right? Or life-saving rules under OSHA and IOGP, you need to be able to intervene almost immediately, right? Putting that in front of the right people to go in and perhaps save a life so that people go back the same way they come in. That's one means of intervention. The second means of intervention is using statistics. You will know what the overall performance and leading indicators of safety risks are in your site. So you'll be able to then take strategic interventions or programs to ensure you take down those leading indicators where you might not to act immediately, but you act and bring in a cultural change. So these are the two types of changes you bring in on the safety side, and we've seen incredible metrics on how that impacts the industry, and it all comes to being actionable across all lines of management.
Yeah, and I can expand on that. It's definitely feels like AI is the buzzword of the times right now. I feel like every other post on LinkedIn nowadays is talking about AI, whether it's good or bad. You know, we just got out of a conversation where people were saying it's 10 out of 10 scary, but 10 out of 10 exciting. And we've been building out our artificial intelligence and the systems that we are now proud to showcase and are adding value to our customers for the better part of almost a decade, right? So tested and true. And even though it's a nascent idea and nascent value to a lot of the end users, it's battle proven, and it's really exciting, the results that are coming out of it for our customers.
Can you give me a couple examples about some of the customers and how their risk profiles have changed due to your technology?
I can think of a few. One that immediately comes to mind isn't purely on human behavior, because human behaviors do account for a lot of what we look for, especially us as human beings. We have a human bias, but a lot of it is the environment in and around the areas where we're working. And we have a customer, we had a conversation earlier today that was telling me that one of the things that they found was incredibly impactful was they had a large stainless steel braided hose that was in the walkway that they had people continuously walking over. And this stainless steel hose, if you weren't looking close enough, it would snag your feet. You'd have some people stumbling a little bit over it, that say somebody's carrying something or somebody is in a precarious situation, that could lead to an injury, right? What they went and did and identified after the AI said, hey, housekeeping, this is an observation that needs attention, this is a potential slip, trip, or fall hazard, was they said, what can we do about this hose? They identified that they weren't actually going to be able to move the hose due to the work that was going on around there, but what they did instead is that they painted it bright pink, right? So even though it's not necessarily human behavior that's causing that particular observation or that particular risk to be highlighted, they were able to put in an engineering control or at least enhance the visibility of it to make sure people were aware that that's something they needed to step over. And that's just one example of it there, but I know, Daniel, you have many more stories of the same.
Plenty, actually, but I'll preface it with another fact, right? If an AI just detects something like PPE or just a harness that comes under something called object detection in the AI world, that doesn't change the life of a safety professional. What would change the life of a safety professional, because he or she still needs to do all of the stuff that they do every day, the effectiveness is going to be the same. What really changes their life is if an AI system detects everything visual that comes under IOGP 577 and OSHA, right, which includes various categories, lifting and hoisting, work at height, as well as things like vehicle safety. So focusing on vehicle safety, I have a beautiful example, actually. There's a construction site, lube oil site, 2-year construction, and large workforce required for the associated construction. They found out that close to about 70% of their risk was due to unsafe vehicle or vehicle safety related risks that were happening, whether that's speeding, whether that's overloading of the associated vehicle, the trucks and so on. When management actually dove deeper, they found out that both themselves and their contractors actually had no idea what all of the norms were and didn't realize that they weren't following the required safety protocol, and as a result there were incidents happening. So what they did, they came out with a 2-month program dedicated specifically to vehicle safety, because that was their biggest risk, right, and the biggest contributor. Within that 2 months time span, the number of vehicle safety risks among all the risks came down to 0, right? And the site had an overall 60 to 70% decrease in leading indicators and safety risks within that 2-month period. And they continued to happen over the years to come within the 2 years that they were deployed at that site. So the number of observations, safety risks and hazards came down to close to 0 at the end of the day. So that's one of the stories that came quickly to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really highlights the power of the technology, because what it really does is an impact in 2 phases, right? The first phase is visibility. Now that you have eyes across all of your facility and all the areas of risk, you really get to see how many things are going on out there and how many things that you were originally missing, right? So that's visibility. And the second thing is, now that you have this treasure trove of information and data, how do you chew through it and make it actionable, as Daniel mentioned, which is really what's important, to get to making actions happen to get down to 0 or go towards that goal 0. And that's where there's a lot of AI-powered analytics to give you the trending to tell you where you should invest your human resources. So instead of having, hey, over the last 4 months, I have 1,000 observations, what does this mean to me? You get sentences that tell you, hey, for this particular area, between the hours of 2 to 4 p.m., you're having people not using their harness appropriately for working at heights. You have an area where right before lunchtime, you have people leaving the confined spaces unbarricaded because they're saying, I'm going to be right back. I don't need to follow that safety rule. Everyone is making different actions based on their own risk perception, but the AI is unbiased, and it will always point things out in the way that the rules are written and the way that they're customized for the sites as they go. So visibility first, and then actionability second. It's transforming safety cultures across many, many logos.
Yeah, those are great examples. You mentioned the speakers that we had this morning. One of them gave an analogy, a hockey analogy about skating to where the puck is going to be, and that kind of. So, what's next for this technology and Detect as a whole? What are you anticipating?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, right? I think one of the speakers showed today that in the last 43 years, how computers evolved from when it started.
That was pretty incredible to remember. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Exactly, right? And you come to today when we are in the world of GPT and so on, right? The next 43 years, you actually can only speculate as to where that's going to go. But what you know for a fact is it's going to go much faster than the last 43 years in the scales of tens of thousands of times. Now, coming to where we fit in, right? What do we have today? What we wanted to do and what we've done successfully across the US right now, or specifically a lot of sites in Texas and Louisiana, is simple. People cannot be everywhere at all points of time, but a lot of what they're doing is visual and leveraging sensor data, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we've built an AI that has the ability to then track things like safety specifically, and then I was speaking about inspections and other pieces. The next step to this is, one piece of this is detection. That's what technology is capable of now, and that's what's deployed across, I was saying, the Baton Rouge area, the Corpus Christi area, and so on. The next step is going to be, how does the management, because today, if you look at even safety matrices, right, they've come down. I think Chet, during the first talk said it is now the refining space, probably one of the safest industries in the world today, but there's still room for improvement. Today, ILO states that 6,000 people die on a daily basis, right? You have 2.3 million people in the industrial workforce, not just refining, but across the industrial space that are fatalities. How do we create that step change? One piece of it is detection, but your workforce is shifting consistently. How do you bring the learnings into the AI on what needs to be done after the detection, right? So you eventually need your workflows, your incident managements, and on all of those pieces, your ERPs, to be more intelligent and be able to bring historical data and changes and recommend that to management, right? Today, it's highly manual. So the next few years, we see detection, recommendation on actions, and all the data acquisition pieces are going to be fully automated. We see a future of facilities where all facilities need to do is look at what the sensors and the AI is generating, right? And what recommendations it's giving, and act on it, bring human competency on how you need to bring actions onto the site. And that human dependency will always be there, right? But the redundant pieces of just detection and working through workflow, having certain people go back 30 years back on what happened in this particular incident, how do we take care of it, those pieces should be automated moving forward. That's one piece. And that is integrating that with other pieces of AI. I was talking about machine-based AI so far, right? The other pieces of AI would bring in large language models, which again, I believe Will was talking about in the last speech, which large language modeling based, combining that with alarms and combining that with detection pieces. This cycle together will really make this industry actually a far more intelligent, efficient, and safer place to live in. And that's going to be the inevitable future of the space.
Can that ultimately lead to prevention and changes in design as well? I mean, if you take it back, take what the AI is telling you,
Absolutely.
go back into new designs.
Yeah, it's what Daniel was describing. It really gives you an intelligent cloud coverage of risk awareness, right? Today you have very pointed, singular awarenesses, which are the human beings that are out walking in the field. And even then their perception is based on their bias and their experience, right? Somebody who's been on the field for 5 years is going to have completely different risk awareness than somebody who's seen the facilities for 35 years, right? As you grow and as you build from what we're building out today, now you're going to have this cloud that's telling you everything that's happening. It's going to be able to point out the areas where you've had normalization or deviation, things that people walk by every single day. That is a risk hazard, but we've just blurred it in our field of vision because it's always there, right? So now you're going to be able to design systems and build out and create mitigations in a preventive manner, as opposed to how we're managing most of our safety programs today is in a reactive manner. Today, most changes happen in our facilities after incidences, after near-loss incidences, if someone was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time to catch behaviors that could have been something worse, right? But now today, you're going to see really what we call the bottom of the safety pyramid, right? For every loss incident, you're going to have 10 to 20 near loss incidences, right? And then from there, for each of those, you probably had 100 to 150 risks that you weren't aware of or shortcuts that were taken that you were lucky to have eyes on before. Now you have eyes on the bottom of the pyramid, and you can design and build out either your engineering controls or behavioral controls and trainings to make sure everyone is aware of the things that happen at the bottom of the pyramid to make that top of the pyramid a thing of the past.
In fact, just to add to that, one more thing I'd like to highlight, right, which was again brought in, there's also the concept of, hey, there's a lot that's happening with AI, how much of it is controllable, and what are the levers we can use, because that's the unspoken risk, right? So today, what we have done or what should be done by other players as well should be, the intent of this AI is not to be punitive or not to finger point on individuals, right? Then that changes the whole play or the whole game. So the AI that's deployed right now has to be GDPR compliant, meaning personal privacy is protected. So before any detections and other pieces are done, complete blurring of individuals, complete blurring of license plates and so on should happen. So that the tools, or with great power comes great responsibility, the tools are used for the right purposes, which is to ensure the overall safety of the site and not to pinpoint action or blame on certain individuals. And only by that means is the technology being used for the greater good than anything else. And that's something we feel extremely strongly about as well. And that's how it's been deployed in many sites that both are of both natures, right? Both non-unionized and unionized sites. And that's a very important element to bring in to ensure that the right controls are kept. Because AI uncontrolled can be used for all kinds of things, right? So it is very important to bring the ethical and moral boundaries on AI, especially in a space that has a very low tolerance of failure and low tolerance of false positives or false data. That's the most important piece as you craft this space out. So whether it's Detect or whether it's anybody else that builds into this space, that's the most important piece to keep in mind while building for this sector.
I agree. That's really interesting stuff. Before we sign off, if any of our listeners want to find out more about your technology, where do they go? What's the best place?
So I would say visit us at detecttechnologies.com. You're going to have a full overview of where it is that we're going, our full product line of AI products and really risk visibility enhancement. As we mentioned, we spoke mostly on the safety piece, but really the creativity is our limit, right? If you can think of a way that you can identify visual risks, saying, hey, this is what good looks like, this is what bad looks like. Let's spend our human energy on the things that are important and less of our human energy on hoping that we find needles in haystacks, so to speak, right? So detecttechnologies.com, you can visit our LinkedIn page as well, where we're very active, or reach out to myself and Daniel with our contact information that we'll be providing as well.
Okay, sounds great. Again, Daniel and Teddy, we can't thank you enough for providing us for a few minutes to let us know in this great discussion about your organization and the technology that just seems to be so important right now. We want to send a thank you to our listeners for listening to this special installment of Hydrocarbon Processing podcast series, The Main Column. And we are here live at the AFPM annual meeting again to Detect Technologies. And Daniel and Teddy, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, and thank you guys at Hydrocarbon Processing.
Thank you for having us, Mike. Absolute pleasure.